All right, folks, let's do this video on the full moon in Aquarius, the first full moon in Aquarius, in the very first degree of Aquarius, in a few hours from now. We've been talking, this is going to be a relatively easy video to do in a certain sense, but there's enough to summarize, but easy because I've been able to put out so many videos this week on the Pluto opposition and then Mercury trine Neptune. This is the first of two full moons in Aquarius. Every year, we will either get two new moons or two full moons in one sign, typically. So we get a full moon in Aquarius in the first degree, and then on August the 22nd, we get a full moon in Aquarius in the very last degree of Aquarius. Aquarius is a very important sign this year because Jupiter is transiting through Aquarius, Saturn is transiting through Aquarius. We had the Jupiter-Saturn grand conjunction in Aquarius in the middle of December 21st of last year, 2021. Or December 15th. You guys can Google the exact date. And we had the grand conjunction. Actually, we had the grand conjunction in the same degree where we have the full moon today. And while the full moon, in my humble opinion, there's something being made of the fact that the full moon is sort of loosely conjunct Pluto and loosely conjunct Saturn, I think that the full moon doesn't really make any other strong aspects other than it just being an important first full moon in a sign that has two heavy hitter planets transiting it this year, and the same degree as the grand conjunction, if we want to make something of that. But you'll get to the same interpretation whether you see this full moon as conjunct Pluto and Saturn as you would by considering the fact that the three transits that are important at the time of this full moon are Mercury trine Neptune, Mercury opposed Pluto, and Mars opposite Jupiter. And of course, it's a full moon in Aquarius, so Saturn is one of the rulers of this full moon. The other ruler being Uranus, which is disposited by Venus, which is in the sign of Virgo, which is disposited by Mercury, which is in the sign of Cancer, and it comes back to the moon itself as ultimately sort of ruling Cancer. So between the moon, Uranus, Venus, Mercury, moon, Uranus, Venus, Mercury, you've got four other planets that are sort of form a certain loop of disposition, dispositing the chart along with Saturn as the other ruler of this full moon. And I would place the appropriate weight on Saturn right now. And it's Saturn's energy that gives this full moon such a sober, restrictive, lesson learning, constructive energy. It's not a happy, exuberant full moon. There is an element of a throwdown to this full moon. And by throwdown, I mean something gets thrown down. It's a little bit like a glove being thrown. You know how when people would announce that they wanted to duel with someone, they would go and smack them across the face with a glove, or they would throw something down in front of them. Or it does have that kind of element to it because there's the idea that something gets brought up around the time of this full moon that then reaches some sort of resolution a month from now, with the August 22nd full moon. That August 22nd full moon is important because it is conjunct a retrograde Jupiter. So there's certainly something to this narrative where something gets some sort of a throwdown around the time of this full moon, with the Leo new moon 2 weeks from now, and that Leo new moon falling roughly 2 months after the Gemini eclipse, the week before and week after that Leo new moon on August 9th. Very, very important and significant things may occur there then. And then, of course, there is the August 22nd full moon that may bring certain things to resolution or culmination. So this full moon, in terms of it being a throwdown, spurs certain things on. Full moons can bring positive things as well. They can bring contracts, they can bring resolutions, they can bring offers. So if there is some of that element or energy in the mix, then it could be that it is an offer or it is a gift, or it is something new and positive that has a positive connotation that's brought up, but that still requires deliberation over the next month, where you think, is this really what I want? What about this? What about that? Is this the best way to do it? Could we? Couldn't we? Is there something behind it? Is there a different way? You know, etc., etc. So there's a considering, reconsidering, or maybe it's an offer and you say, and there are just further developments as the month goes on related to whatever positive thing or project culmination or culmination has been brought to the fore. I'm just noticing that my iPhone is a little bit wonky, so I'm sorry if I'm a little bit wonky in terms of angle in this video. Full moons bring, more than anything else, they bring illumination, and they bring intuitive illumination. And that, 5 minutes into this video, that is the first important thing that I have said in this video. I'll be the first to admit. I hope you found the first 5 minutes setup useful, but this idea of intuitive illumination, internal illumination, that sometimes is accompanied by worry, because when it comes to the moon's light, it's reflected light. It's not clarity. There's a difference between clarity and illumination. The moon's disk does not emanate light, and is not always full. And it is sometimes less full, and sometimes completely dark, and sometimes more full. And at the time of the full moon, something intuitively and emotionally, and when we say intuition and emotion, sometimes fear and worry play a part in that as well, comes to full illumination. You have an emotional meltdown, you reach some sort of an emotional point of completion, you get fed up with something, someone expresses something at you, there's anger, especially leading up to this full moon. There can be frustration, there can be anxiety, there can be sleepless nights, there can be worry and constantly processing and overthinking things. There can be all that stuff. And the thing to pay attention to, insofar as the first important thing I've said in this video, is what is it that is being illuminated? Where's the disc full? What needs to be revealed? What needs to be discussed? What needs to be processed? What needs to be looked at? Now, because this full moon has a throwdown element, and because the energies over the past couple of months have been complex with regard to the squares to Neptune, the oppositions to Pluto, and Jupiter's own entrance into Pisces since the middle of May to the end of July, and we've tackled various themes in prior videos: deception, delusion, fear, gaslighting, our own inability to tell whether something is a problem or not, suspicion, power play, intrusiveness, attempts at control or usurping, crises from 2015-16 that had the potential and signs being seen of what can be healed there, but whatever is being healed is somehow also under threat with this kind of deceptive energy. There could be something around this full moon. For some people, this full moon could bring up something where you really feel like you need to take up arms against it, or you need to defend yourself against it. For other people, and I would hazard to say for most people, it brings something up that requires looking at, working on, an action or a set of actions that occur over the next 4 weeks and culminate in the next full moon, and on August the 22nd. And it could very much have a kind of a make or break energy. It certainly has a very important energy, and I mean make or break because of both Jupiter and Saturn in Aquarius. Wherever Jupiter goes, I like to say, and I observe, that it ends a 12-year cycle, starts a 12-year cycle, and creates what an astrologer, I want to make sure, what somebody else coined this term, and it, to me, has proven right time and time again, an auspicious new beginning. I can tell you that my experience is the auspicious new beginning is always accompanied by an ending. And sometimes with Jupiter, the beginning occurs while Jupiter is doing the transit. Sometimes the space for the new beginning has been created, which is a beginning. A beginning is a zero. A beginning is a nothing. And from there, things grow. A beginning is not necessarily millions of dollars, or a new home necessarily, or a new lover, or a child. It's the start of a process, but it's also the end of a process. So wherever Aquarius sits in your chart, 2021, end of a 12-year cycle, start of a 12-year cycle. And I'll bet you felt it. You've probably felt the ending. And then strangely enough, Jupiter went into Pisces over the summer, which it rarely does. It typically spends 13 odd months in the same sign. And the connection between the new beginning of this year and the new beginning next year in the sign of Pisces, where Pisces sits in your chart, what house it occupies, what that house stands for, you've been given intimations of that new beginning and of that connection. But now Jupiter is retrograding, and on July the 28th, it will come back into Aquarius. So finishing up what Jupiter started in the first half of the year in terms of creating this auspicious new beginning and completing the ending is now on the agenda for the rest of the year. Wherever Saturn goes, it brings to your visibility where your boundaries and behaviors have been self-defeating. Now, when we say boundaries, we automatically go to a place of we need to place more boundaries. And that could be true. But I'm also using the word behaviors. And so sometimes it could be behaviors that are causing you to value yourself less, but sometimes it can be behaviors that are causing a certain amount of alienation or problem in your life. So you've got to examine what the results are, what is being brought to you, and what lessons are being brought to you, and where you fall on the equation on the side of where are your boundaries and patterns and behavioral patterns. And you cannot always, sometimes, and here's the issue, you cannot go into victim mode with Saturn, because with Saturn, you are your own victim. And that's what Saturn is trying to highlight and saying, for the past 28 years, you've been doing this, and this, and it's been fine, but it's not working to your benefit. And I'm going to show you now that it's not working to your benefit. And I'm going to work with you relentlessly over the next 2+ years till March 2023 to make sure that you do not fall back into the path of least resistance, that you do not keep repeating the same patterns that you've been repeating over and over again in the part of the chart where Aquarius sits, i.e. which house it occupies and what that house stands for, and not to fall back on the path of least resistance. So if there has been a tendency to be, if the path of least resistance is to be conflict averse, Saturn will say, stop doing that. And here's one example where, again, you fell into the path of least resistance and bam, here's the lesson. And you're doing it again next week and bam, here's the, and so with Saturn, there can be a sense of repetition, repeating the same issue maybe with different people in different circumstances over and over again, so you get the message and you stop behaving in that way. Sometimes the behavior and the pattern can mean too much aggression. Sometimes it can mean, so it's always geared towards, as I've said to you before on this channel, Saturn is preoccupied with you operating at your highest potential. And that doesn't just mean career. Your highest potential in your relationship with your children, your highest potential in your relationship with a parent, your highest potential in your relationship with your home, your highest potential in relationship with your dog, your highest potential in your relationship with your job, your highest potential with your relationship with a spouse or a business partner. And so the question becomes, where are you not acting in a way that can lead to your fulfilling that highest potential? And Saturn will keep bringing that up to you over and over again. When you have 2 full moons in the sign, in the part of your chart where there's an ending of a 12-year cycle, start of a 12-year cycle, an auspicious new beginning, and important lessons to be learned on which a lifetime's foundation can be laid, you cannot ignore these 2 full moons, because they're illuminating something for you intuitively, not rationally, not something you know, not something you have figured out. A sense of alarm, a sense of concern, a sense of, I can't let this go, but I don't know exactly what it is. And it does it twice. And the second time it does it conjunct the planet that is creating the auspicious new beginning, that is retrograde, and that's going to go direct in September, October. You can Google the date when Jupiter goes direct this year. I think both Jupiter and Saturn go direct in October, if I'm not mistaken. It could be September, irrespective. And then, of course, Jupiter moves out of Aquarius in December, irrespective. And things are being processed. The first attempt at new beginnings that was made between December and May of this year, we're integrating those lessons and we're integrating those energies. And this full moon happens in conjunction with that retrograde Jupiter. So there's something about the next month, and there's a throwdown. You know, the universe has thrown down a glove, somebody else has thrown down a glove, and it has this make or break energy. And whether it is make or break is going to be relevant to each person, so that you can determine whether the situation that you're in is working to your highest advantage or not. Certain things are worth making and working through and constructing. Certain things, based on where we are at a particular point in time and where somebody else or something else is at a particular point in time, may not be feasible in terms of sustaining, and so it may be time to break it. And some of this energy has been brewing. With the full moon, you can feel it 48 to 72 hours before, and the energy has been moving anyway. So you might be at a point where you're like, yep, I see it, I feel it. Just sit with it a little bit, because again, there's something here that needs to continue to be processed for another month. That doesn't mean, as I said, for some people there's a need to take action now. For some people there's going to be a need, there's going to be action that's taken over the next month that is going to prove decisive by the time you get to the next full moon. Part of it is that the cycle between the new moons and the full moons is changing with these two new moons and full moons. New moons and full moons occur in opposing signs consecutively, but sometimes you have a new moon in Aries followed by a full moon in Libra, then a new moon in Taurus, followed by a full moon in Scorpio, then a new moon in Libra, followed by a full moon in, Gemini, followed by a full moon in Sagittarius, then a new moon in Cancer, followed by a full moon in, good Lord, Capricorn, so on and so forth. Sometimes you have the full moon first and the new moon later. You have a full moon in Libra, followed by the new moon in Aries. Then you have a full moon in Scorpio, followed by the new moon in Taurus. We've been having the full moon first and the new moon second, which means that we have been in a cycle where things related to a particular house where the new moon is going to occur get set up before. The crises and the drama get set up for about a month or two before, and then when the new moon happens, we take action on it. We're moving into what some people would consider a more natural cycle. I just think that if it's happening naturally, then it's natural. I think that sometimes maybe that's what's needed. We're now moving to the fact that the new moon is going to occur with Leo on August the 9th, and then the full moon is going to occur in Aquarius again on August the 22nd. And then we're going to have Virgo, Pisces, new moon in Libra, full moon in Aries, new moon in Scorpio. So the new moon cycle is now new moon first, full moon second. So the new moon on July the 9th will start to provide further acceleration for the second Aquarius full moon conjunct a retrograde Jupiter on August the 22nd. But the drama starts now. Whatever has been going on for you during eclipse season, whatever has been going on for you with Jupiter entering Pisces and then starting to retrograde out of it, whatever has been going on with this kind of crises or energies that started rolling around 2015, 2016 about things that need to be released, expectations regarding people, expectations about how things are going to go. Whatever drama has been brewing and where you're feeling like you need to either set certain lines in the sand or say bye-bye, where you need to construct something based on mutually respectful boundaries or sever boundaries and ties, is coming. That's one way to look at it, but it is going to be the way that might apply for most people. That is what you need to examine, and you will be required to take action if, especially if it's about effective self-preservation and you fulfilling your potential. As I've said before, August is the most important month of this year. Will not surprise me if matters related to the June 10th eclipse and conjunct Mercury retrograde and past issues, past relationships, something about that comes to a head around the new moon in Leo on August the 9th. These Aquarius These Aquarius moons are bringing awareness to you with regard to where lessons need to be learned, where boundaries need to be set, and what behaviors need to be stopped, what new behaviors need to be begun, where you need to start working out more and constructing the right kind of reality and fulfilling your highest potential, where the sign of Aquarius is in your chart, what house it occupies, and what it stands for. Bam! There's the essence of this full moon. And this first full moon says, here's the agenda, here's the information you need, here's the crisis, here's what is intuitively flaring up for you that needs visibility and review. Now take a month to figure out whether you're going to make it or break it, whether it's going to make or break. And what actions do you need to take? Mercury trining Neptune and opposing Pluto bring visibility and communication and processing and greater clarity about things that were murky in May and June. I'm not saying they're bringing complete clarity. We might leave complete clarity to something we get to at the end of August, and we might realize that there are certain relationships or situations where we will not get complete clarity, and therefore that is why we're being asked whether we're going to make or break them. And with Mars opposing Jupiter, I would just say, be careful over the next 3 or 4 days of feeling like you have to do something that is going to upset the apple cart. You know, as I've said, Jupiter is baking a cake in the oven and trying to bring some healing to the crises from 2015-16, some sort of solution, something that may not be completely self-evident yet. And the cake is in the oven, or maybe let's just call it a souffle. So don't be so tempted to mess it around so that it can't come. There is a need, when Mars opposes Jupiter, just make sure that your own aggression or assertion take action, defend your boundaries. But try to do it in such a way that those things that you suspect are coming up or being brought forth in a way that is healing, that can still be maintained. So if you have a kitchen, you've just put a souffle in the oven, clean the kitchen. Make your salad. Bring out the plates. Figure out what you're going to do, how you're going to serve it. But don't open the oven and poke the damn thing so it deflates and it just kind of goes away. This energy is just true for the next week. There's something about this full moon that brings something up that needs to continue to be looked at, planned, plotted for, figured out. And I would look at 28 days from now when you can expect some sort of resolution. If something gets brought for you, even if it's positive, it's an offer, you don't have to shoot arrows at it. You can choose to have a conversation around it. You can choose to not have a conversation with the person where the relationship is trickiest. You could choose to have conversations around with someone else, with an expert, with someone, just to understand what needs to be done. What is the best? There might be a need to play because this is a narrative that is developing over the next 28 days, there might be a need to play a certain amount of chess. But playing chess is not inaction. And most importantly, my dears, what is it that is being illuminated for you intuitively that feels like it needs to be looked at? And what are the lessons around it? What is the path of least resistance? What actions are you taking? What actions are you taking? What actions are you taking that are not serving you? It could be inaction. It could be overaction. Behaviors, patterns that have been around for a while that are not serving you. Where are your boundaries? And the secret to this full moon is in something we've been touching on for the past few readings. Know who you are. Know who the other person is. Saturn is not a romantic planet. It's a romantic planet insofar as it can really build a happy foundation moving forward. That's so funny I said that, but it's not a romantic planet insofar as there's nothing rose-colored about it. Know and understand who you are and who the other party is. See each other for who you are. Accept each other for who you are. And accept the situation and the other people for who they are, so that you are not falling into the trap of thinking something amazing is going to happen, or they're going to act out of character, or the problem is suddenly going to be solved. It is not a time to get into fantasy land. It is not a time to nag. It is not a time to criticize people for not being who they are. It is a time to recognize and respect and understand that people have their quirks, that if you find certain things about certain people intolerable and despicable, chances are they find the same thing about you and they find you difficult. We all have to put up with each other. That does not mean that you have to be in a relationship or be riding a dead horse that is not functional or not working or not helpful or constructive anymore. But at the same time, the solution to this full moon and what it is posing is for you to be very, very clear about who you are, self-recognition and self-acceptance, and what is going to work for you and what is not going to work for you, so that you are not being expected to, or you're not expecting yourself to all of a sudden act in ways that are not going to come easily or naturally to you. That doesn't mean that you don't eliminate behaviors or patterns. Going into the path of least, away from the path of least resistance, you're still going to do it as yourself. And you need to do it as yourself. At the same time, the way to reach resolution, whether it is make or break, is about being very clear about who the other person is. And so if there are certain things about them that you cannot deal with or stand, or that are deal breakers for you, really examine and see whether you can get to a point where you can accept them and choose to love them and wish them well and remain a constructive presence in their life and they in yours, because there's an understanding that certain things that they just are who they are. They have their childhoods, they have their issues, they're wired a certain way. So you might be saying, well, this person is naturally deceptive, or always a pain in the neck, or I can't believe they do that and they're driving me crazy, etc. Stop wishing they were someone else so they would behave differently. They have shown you who they are. They're going to show up as themselves. Now the question is, where are you going to go from here? And that kind of acceptance of who you are and what your quirks are and what will work and what will not work for you. Authenticity. 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 Saturn, Aquarius. Clear-eyed, unromantic, unrelenting. What is right? What is fair? What is the truth? The truth in capital letters. Who are you? Who is the other person? Neither is perfect. What is going to work or not work? What have you been doing that is putting you in the line of fire or making trouble for you? And over the next 28 days, try not to do that. And at least try to identify what that is, so that something constructive can be built here. And it may be that a situation needs to end, or people need to part ways. Or it may be that as a result of discussing and evaluating who each of us is and accepting who each of us is, we resolve not to nag and pull down and hurt and harm and wish the other person was different, and so debilitate ourselves and the other person in the process, but actually find greater love and understanding and acceptance. Depending on who you are and what the situation is and what the fates have in store for you and what is right for you and what you need to develop, it's either going to be the make that is going to work for you or the break. But the resolution is 28 days from now, and action is needed. But over the next 3 or 4 days, just try not to puncture the souffle that is baking in the oven. And that does not mean be in inaction. If you need to talk to someone else, trust it. If you need to get other perspectives, if you need to inquire, if you need to, it may be that for the next week to 2 weeks, you are a little bit more sideways about the action you take, and then after the Leo new moon on the 9th, you're much more direct about it. Or in certain cases, as I said, you may feel like, no, I need to take action now. And so if that's what applies to you, then by all means, get the right expertise, get the right help, and do it. If you found this video useful, forward, share, like, comment, subscribe to YouTube channel, click on bell icon to be notified when I do new videos. My contact information is in the description box if you want a reading with me and inquire about rates or want me to make an easy-to-read version of your chart. Inquire at that email address. Happy full moon in Aquarius.